Populism has been largely studied in the past years, but the role of citizens apparently is not really considered that much by academia. So, in your opinion, why is that so? What happens that should be changed in this regard?
I think this is partly true because this has been very, very much the case at the beginning. Now there is a shift. I see more and more studies which are also considering and trying to understand what are the motives behind the populist votes of citizens. But in general, my opinion is that, of course, it's a very, very complex phenomenon. So each and every research study have to make some choices because there are natural limitations. You have to focus if you want to study in depth on certain components. I think studying citizens' motivations just because of the fact that they also involve some psychological and emotional elements is not an easy task. So therefore, my explanation at least is that the academics first wanted to figure out what the phenomena is itself. So they focus very much on studying its characteristics and also the role of the parties. I mean, how do parties actually portray populism, about their narratives, about their messaging, and so on and so forth. So in a way, there have been already accumulated some knowledge on the different, let's say, components of this complex phenomena. I think now is very much important to bring all of this knowledge together and to see how it relates to each other and what kind of picture it draws overall, so that finally we can have a more comprehensive understanding of what's happening in our societies. As I said, the populism is a very complex phenomenon. You can even look at it as an ecosystem where there are very many different players, in this sense, stakeholders, and there are also very complicated links between and among them. So there is a need to study all of them. I mean, otherwise you end up with a patchwork which wouldn't tell you the whole truth. So decision makers are definitely part of the ecosystem. As stakeholders, they also can have different characteristics. They can be mainstream parties, for example, and decision makers, or populist in nature. So so they're different in a way. We have to know more about both types. But at the end of the day, who gives a mandate and legitimize the decision makers, no matter whether mainstream or populist? Those are citizens. So citizens are the origin in a way at first, and then also citizens are the ones who end up to be the target of the populist policies and consequences. So they're like this fundamental ingredient without which I suppose you cannot have a full understanding of the phenomena. So it's very, very important to study citizens both as a source of legitimacy through their voting choices and their motivation, as well as a target in the sense of societal impact and consequences of those new changes.
Could you tell us a little bit more what ECAS will be doing?
Our main task would be to implement the so-called action-oriented research under the project. Also because this is our strength as a citizen-centric organization. We are not academics. We do policy research from time to time, but of course it's not comparable to the in-depth academic knowledge and research methods. So what we would like to do is to take at least the preliminary results from the academic research and to test them through the so-called citizens panels. I suppose that you're maybe familiar with the methodology. It's very fashionable nowadays. We have experimented with it some 10 years ago as well. So we are pretty aware of how we should do that. So actually, the citizens panels involve random selection of citizens, but in a way as to ensure representativeness in terms of age, population, professional occupation, gender as well. Usually those people are brought together, let's say for a day, and they are put through deliberations facilitated by moderators and experts. So we have three objectives with the citizens panels. First, to get the input of citizens on the preliminary academic findings. Second, to raise citizens' awareness of those findings. And third, to try to measure whether the deliberations that will take place during the citizens' panel will have an impact into the change of attitudes of citizens. So we are going to measure through deliberative polling at the beginning and at the end of the citizens' panel, putting forward to citizens one and the same questions, whether they have been influenced by those deliberations and how. The second thing that we would like to do is actually to put into and to experiment with crowdsourcing citizens' opinions, like soliciting the so-called wisdom of the crowd on some of the research questions through an online platform. This will inform us and will give us an insight whether citizens view populism and the research questions the same way in which the academics did, or whether there are certain differences, and I think it will be an interesting exercise at the end for the analysis. And last but not least, we are going to construct a digital dashboard, which is actually a result of a machine learning exercise. We will teach a machine to detect online conversations that are taking place on different platforms. Of course, the ones that are public, because we are going to follow very strictly defined ethical guidelines for social listening, in order to see if we can detect populist propaganda through keywords. So this is also an experiment that we have already implemented on another subject, on the subject of learning mobility. It had some interesting results, but of course populism is a much more controversial topic, so we are looking forward to see what we are going to find out of this. So the idea is, after that, to bring all of those insights from the different methods of citizens' involvement and to see if they line up into something which makes sense as a comprehensive picture, or whether there are actually divergences, and then ask ourselves why.